Welcome back, everybody. Here with Andy Hunton from Bishop Brady, going to Franciscan for baseball. Exciting for you to be able to have that opportunity. So let's start out with the start of your high school sports career. Let's actually go before that. Let's go to just your sports career in general. Started playing baseball from a young age. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I started playing baseball. I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, playing t-ball, and then I played Cal Ripken baseball for up until I was 12, and after that I played a year of Babe Ruth, and then went into high school. And other sports, I played soccer and basketball. I've done karate for many years, so I've kind of done a little bit of everything.
For you, those other sports besides baseball, you mentioned soccer and basketball. We'll get into karate in a minute. What'd you think of those sports?
Well, I think they were fun, and as a young athlete growing up, it's really good to play other sports to develop different muscle groups, and to not overwork a set of muscles. So, in the fall, playing soccer, not baseball, was really good because I used more of my legs than my arms. And, playing basketball, it was a nice physical workout, which really helped balance out around the year to keep playing sports.
Gotcha. So, what was your favorite at that point? Was it always baseball?
As a kid, I was actually a really big soccer fan, and there was a time where I was actually going to quit baseball. But as a 9-year-old, you don't really get that much say in what you can and can't do. So I continued to play, and then heading into probably 8th grade, I at that point was really all in on baseball, and that was my number one sport.
So, for you, what was it about baseball that really just grabbed your imagination?
I think there was just a difference in competitiveness and kind of the mental game that I really enjoyed. Thinking through the game, thinking about everything that's going to happen, and also just being able to perform doing something that's really hard and facing guys who are also really good at the game. That always drew me into the game.
At what point did you quit those other sports and pretty much go all in on baseball?
So I stopped playing basketball after 6th grade. I'd never played in middle school. I just played rec league, and then once I aged out, I didn't go back to basketball. I played soccer up to my sophomore year, and I ended up quitting after that year because I didn't play a lot, and I decided I'd rather play fall baseball than play soccer. And once the end of my sophomore season happened, I was all in for baseball.
Okay. So, for you, let's talk about karate. When did you start karate, and that's something that you've continued with?
So I started karate, I was 5 years old. So I was a kindergartner, and I didn't really know what to make of it at first. I was just kind of going, it was fun, but I was a really shy kid, and I actually progressed really quickly. I made some big ranks generally early. It took me about 7 years to get to a junior level black belt, which was pretty fast for someone of my age. And once I started to take off, I stuck with it because I loved it.
For you, what do you think the benefits were of karate in terms of helping you learn your body a little bit, and just develop different muscles and be more flexible for other sports like baseball?
Karate, it's kind of like a more physical version of dance because there's a lot of balance involved, and it helped me gain better balance and to be more flexible and athletic to accomplish certain moves. And because it kind of went year round, it allowed me to continue to work those muscle groups and to stay flexible, to stay athletic, and to maintain strength no matter what season I was in. And it taught me a good moral code to live by. So karate has done a lot for me throughout my time partaking in it.
Okay. So you've continued with that throughout the years. What are just some of your favorite aspects about it?
For karate, I really like the physicality of it. And again, it's something that causes you to think, because as much as we are taught different moves and techniques, when you're on the street, there's not a certain technique that's right. You just have to do something. And, that's always been fun to me to think about. And, I just like the athletic side of it. I like doing things that are really challenging athletically and physically. And that's always been there for me.
What do you think the most challenging part about it is?
Definitely remembering things. Once I started to get really busy in high school, I had trouble going back to class because, I wasn't there every week, so I'd forget a lot. And, trying to remember all these different techniques and to present them in a correct and powerful manner was just a really big struggle for me. And sometimes learning the concepts of different moves has been an issue.
Okay. How'd you work through those challenges?
Well, I stuck with it, and I asked clarifying questions. Where am I hitting here? What is going on? What's the visualization on it? And that's always helped because once it's explained and once your eyes are open to this different view, you kind of are able to see more of the whole technique.
Okay. Let's go back into baseball a little bit. Started to go all in on baseball towards your junior year because I know you quit soccer. So talk about that for a little bit.
So, I made the varsity team for soccer as a sophomore. We had a new coach who was a really good guy, but the first week of the season I had COVID, so I missed the first few games. I missed some big practices. And I came back and I just rode the bench. And I remember I got to a point where I started to keep track, and it was about 10 hours of game time consecutively that I rode the bench, which, kind of got to me a little bit because, I wanted to play and I watched everyone else on the team get into games, and I just kind of sat there. So near the end of the year, I asked the coach, am I going to play? And once I talked to him, he put me in a little bit. We ended up making Final Four, which was great, and I had a great time with the team, but, I started to realize, that time that I was spending on the bench, I could have been hitting a baseball or throwing or, doing something else that was more productive and more fun to me. So once the season ended, I called it quits and I said, I'm all in for baseball.
In your first 2 years of high school baseball, what positions did you play?
So going into high school, I was a middle infielder, and I kind of jumped around. I played third base a lot because of my size, but I didn't quite have the physicality of a third baseman. I had the athleticism and agility for a middle infielder, and I felt more natural there. So I went in as a shortstop, and then shortly into my freshman year, I developed an arm issue, so I had to move over to second. Sophomore year, I started on the varsity team as the second baseman, and going into junior year, I was planning on playing shortstop, and some things changed and positions had to be moved around. And I think we'll get into that in a couple of minutes.
Okay. So talk about your first few seasons of high school baseball and how those went.
So freshman and sophomore year, they were very good developing years for me. They by far weren't my best seasons. Freshman year, I cracked the varsity roster kind of middle of the season, and I played in 2 games and drew 2 walks, but I didn't really do much at the varsity level. That year I had a really fun JV season. We went 9-1. We had a lot of good games, a lot of good players, and it was really good to develop and get some ABs in. Sophomore year, I started on varsity, and I started off pretty well, but going into kind of the middle of the season, I hit a slump that I couldn't get out of. Just a lot of no-hit games, a lot of looking strikeouts, and I didn't feel confident at the plate. And then, I got hit again with something pretty awful in the middle of the season. I ended up catching COVID again, so I missed about a half of the season out with COVID, which probably ruined, the end of my season where I really couldn't get out of the slump. So I ended up hitting that year, I think, 226, which, that really wasn't all that impressive as a varsity starter. And it wasn't what I was looking for. So, after that year, I really, locked it in and tried to find something to work on to get better, and improve off of that year.
So now we're getting into the good stuff, the prospect days. So let's go into fall ball.
So my first ever actual season of fall ball was going into the fall of my junior year, and I played in a little prospects league, and that's where I met Drew. I met other guys like Tyler and Gabe, and fall ball, we won 2 games the whole year, but we somehow made the championship, and it was just a fun time. Nobody cared. You just kind of got to play, get some reps, play positions you didn't normally play. I think that helped me because I was in the lineup all the time because we'd have 9 guys show up and that was it. I got a little bit of opportunities. I played a little bit of third, some short, second, I think a little bit of first. And then I also caught and I got to pitch. We just had a good time. Like I said, we won 2 games the whole season, and we made it to the championship game where we lost, but we had some epic comebacks in the playoffs, and we made it through, even when we were struggling, and when we lost most of the kids that had started the season with us. But that fall was a really good building time for myself, for character, for friends, for baseball in general, and I really enjoyed it.
What were your favorite fall ball memories from that season? Because I have some.
Well, all right. So I think, one of the things I remember about fall ball a lot was somebody was always watching football in the dugout.
Yes.
Somebody had the phone out, whether it was the Packers or, the Patriots, somebody was watching a football game in the dugout. Something else that I think was a lot of fun was one of our coaches, his name was J-Rob, and he always threw us BP, and he threw really hard, and at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning for a fall ball game, that was a nice big wake up when J-Rob threw a BP pitch by you. Then I think the other big memory I had, we had the first win of our season, we had a walk-off win, and they didn't have the scoreboard on, so none of us knew what the score was, but I came around and I scored the walk-off run, and 3 of us celebrated, and the rest of the team was just kind of sitting there, looking at us like, what just happened?
It was me, you, Tyler, and Gabe were celebrating, and everybody else was like, what happened?
The kid who hit the walk-off hit didn't even know it happened. And, we thought that was really funny. We had a great laugh about it. And then the other big memory from fall ball was our playoff semifinal, playing the Bobcats. We scored, I think, 7 runs in the last inning to win. Over a very controversial call, but we made it happen. We came from behind and beat them.
That was a good memory for sure. So for you entering your junior season, what was your change in mindset?
Well, I got to hit leadoff, which is something that helped. I'm a very contact-minded person, so hitting in the leadoff spot was really helpful. And I think the plan was just kind of see ball, hit ball, and not really worry about much else. And the plan going in was to be the starting shortstop because we had developed a hole by the end of my sophomore year where we had a lefty playing short, which was very interesting to say the least for a high school team. But early on into the season, actually in preseason, things changed, and we had a hole at another position that the team called on me to fill, which took me by surprise.
So catcher, all of a sudden, after not really doing that for a while, what was that adjustment like for you?
Well, catching, so I switched from shortstop to catcher to fill the hole. That was interesting because I was not the one who suggested I would catch. The coaches decided like 3 weeks before opening day that I was going to be the starting catcher. And I kind of looked at them and I was like, what are you talking about? I'm going to play short. But, I didn't really argue about it. I didn't fight them over anything. They still let me hit leadoff. But adjusting to the position was pretty difficult because I hadn't played it consistently for 4 or 5 years. So blocking balls, throwing runners out, it was a really large and interesting adjustment to make, especially early on into the season. And my first memory of catching in a game for high school was a scrimmage at Portsmouth, and it had to have been about 30 degrees out with a wind chill. And I just remember in like the second inning, the home plate umpire yelling at me because he kept getting hit by the ball since I couldn't block it. There wasn't anything I could do. And I tried to explain that to him, but he wasn't really happy about it. And I think that really fueled me to get better.
All right, so some of the growing pains, I guess, of just kind of learning the position, but also of a really cold day. Once you got more reps, did you start to feel more comfortable?
Yeah. The more I worked on it, I felt better. The only thing I would have changed about it was I would have asked for more reps in practice. A lot of the work I did, I had to do after practices, after games, because I wasn't getting that attention in practices. But the more work I put in, the better I got, the more comfortable I felt behind the plate. And I think the more comfortable my team felt with me behind the plate. And by the end of the season, I definitely was a varsity level catcher.
Was there a point, like a certain game, where all of a sudden it was like, I got this?
So yeah, that happened early on. I think it was our third game of the season. We were playing Campbell away. And in like the first or second inning, there was a pass ball to the backstop. And Campbell's backstop is pretty short, which was a gift for me early on in the season when I couldn't block balls very well. But a ball got away, and I remember there was a runner on second. He tried to run for third. I remember getting the pass ball, I picked it up, I spun and I threw him out at third. And it was a really flashy play. It was something that I'd make in the middle infield all the time. But I think once I threw him out, I was like, I got this. I can do this.
I remember that game. That was a fun game. You guys ended up winning, I think.
Yeah, I had the go-ahead double in the fifth inning.
Yeah. So that was a cool game. As the season started to go on, you got more and more confident with it. And then you guys had a pretty good year that year.
Yeah. We went 15-1. We made the Final Four. 8 of our starters made All-State. Our coach won Coach of the Year. Just about anything that you could write up for a team happened for us that year. It was really impressive.
So talk a little bit back to your freshman year, your sophomore year, and how the team evolved from that point.
So my freshman year, we had a weird COVID year, so we were playing kind of around. We played a lot of D2 teams, and we won. We had a lot of talent. We had Connor Trebig, who won D3 Player of the Year. Jake Blake, he's the shortstop at Gordon College. We had a couple of really good, players who did a lot of damage. But we had an issue with playoffs that year. They did seeding out of a hat and not by position. So we ended up getting, I think, the 5th seed, which gave us a home game. But I think we would have been the 2nd seeded team had they not done it, so we would have got a first round bye. But we played the first round of playoffs at home, and it was a close game against Conant. In fact, it was 2-2 going into the bottom of the 7th inning, where we ended up in a bases loaded 1-out situation. And our coach put on a suicide squeeze, and our batter popped it up, and they doubled up the guy at second to get out of the inning. And then the game goes to the ninth inning, where a runner from Conant stole third, and the throw went into left field, so we scored. So up 3-2, we go to the bottom of the ninth, and we're down to another bases loaded 1-out situation with our 3 and 4 hitters coming up. So everything looked really promising, and our 3 hitters struck out, 4 hitter popped out, and our season ended, which was a really tough way to go. But it helped me learn a lot more about how to play high school baseball and what was expected. And then moving forward to sophomore year, we started out like 2-2, and then we lost 6 games in a row, fell to 2-8. And I mean, we looked terrible. It looked like we weren't gonna make playoffs, and something clicked in us. The last 6 games we won, went back to 8-8, made the playoffs, and then lost again in the first round to Guilford that year. And it was a tough game. It was a close game, but everything we hit was just at someone, and it was not quite what you'd want in a playoff game. But it happened, and the players who stayed, we learned from it, and we got better. And going into junior year, we came out with a competitive fire to win every game, and the talent we had got us there.
So moving on now, you had a summer ball season and then also fall ball leading into senior year.
Mm-hmm. So summer ball that year, I played for Post 65, Ware Junior Legion, the boys in blue. And that was probably one of the most fun seasons I've ever had. We were a really talented team, a lot of really talented players. It was a really good year. I played with a lot of good players, and we made the state tournament, and we made it all the way to the finals, and we played a really close competitive game in the finals. It was exactly what a championship game should be like, but I ended up striking out to lose the state tournament, which left me with a big chip on my shoulder. And so, I've just kind of been going out there since, trying to improve off of that, trying to play better than that, and prove myself to be more than just the last out of a championship game.
All right, and then moving into the fall season.
So the fall, I played with a lot of the same kids I played for John Stark in, I think it's like the 603 league. And again, we had a really good year. We had a lot of fun that year too, and we won a lot of games. We made the playoffs again, and the way they did playoffs, they had like the preliminary weekend and then the championship weekend. And so the preliminary weekend, we won both the games, and game 2 for our game, I hit a walk-off single that put us into the championship weekend, which was that was a huge hit for me, a huge moment for the team, because I believe it was a scoreless game up to that point. So being able to contribute like that was really awesome. And then championship weekend, unfortunately we fell short in the semifinal, but again, we had a really good season. We made it to the Final Four again, and we just we were just able to grind it out.
And then senior season for Bishop Brady.
So senior year, I came in as the captain and the starting catcher, and senior year was it looked to be really rough. Starting that year, we lost a lot of starters. We graduated 4, plus 3 got injured. And kind of coming back with only 2 or 3 starters from last year, that was a really tough thing to work with. But we had a really talented freshman class and a lot of kids who really worked hard in the off season. So we found ways to fill out the lineup, to fill out the pitching that we had lost, especially. And starting the season, we started off pretty well. We went like 3-1 in our first 4 games, which is really good. was a really good start for us and a really good sign. And I did my best to mentor the freshmen to mature quickly because that's what you had to do there. I remember talking to some of the other players and even my dad about it. I was like, the freshmen who are going to make the varsity roster are the ones who can mature the fastest. And, we had some guys who did that. We had some guys who, really wanted it, who really worked at it, and, who made it ultimately and who played big roles. For example, one of our freshmen, Luke Bedard, he hit .480, made first team All-State as a freshman. He was our cleanup hitter. He had a really impressive season for, coming in as just a freshman. Nobody had even heard of him. And we went 11-5 this year, made the playoffs, won our first round game, lost to Campbell in the quarterfinals, but still for a young team like we had, we did a really impressive job to win games and execute.
All right, and then your college decision, you obviously knew you wanted to play baseball and you also wanted to do something you were interested in for college and go someplace, right? What was that whole process like for you?
So I had talked with our AD and my guidance counselor in the spring of my junior year, kind of near the end of the year, and it was just about college recruitment. How do I do it? What the heck is the whole process like? Because I had no idea. I'd never played travel, so I never went to perfect game combines or anything. I never had any, college camps that I went to, so I didn't have exposure, and I didn't really have any offers. So, I got the gist of, pick some schools that you're interested in, talk to the coaches, see what the team's like, see what the school's like, and kind of work from there. So I started looking around over the summer. I toured a couple places locally. I toured SNU, I toured St. Anselm, I toured Stonehill, and then that fall I looked into a college, Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, and it was just a college I really loved. I loved everything it offered, and the environment that it had, and the campus was nice, and the field was nice. So in early October, I decided I'd reach out to the coach, see what he was looking for, see if he had a spot on the roster. And he replied back, told me, apply, make sure I get accepted, and then we can talk further. So I applied. 3 weeks later, I got my acceptance letter, which was awesome. It was huge. So I emailed him back, I reached out, and I sent him some video. We had a few quick conversations, and, overall in about 5 weeks, I became a committed player. I committed on November 9th to go to Franciscan and play baseball.
Wow, super exciting. So for you, you're going as a catcher. What was your thoughts on that? Because I know initially that wasn't something that you were interested in.
Yeah, so since my junior year, I've been trying to get out of catching. That summer of junior year, I played shortstop. That fall, I played shortstop. Going into senior year, my plan going into that fall of senior year, I was going to play shortstop. And the video I sent him, my coach at Franciscan, the video I sent, he told me I looked better suited as a catcher, which blew my mind, because I'd had a really kind of troublesome junior year catching, and I hadn't really loved the position as much as I felt I should have if I was going to college for it. And on top of that, I've played middle infield my whole life. I've caught for a year, and that's still kind of a huge question. How do I look better as a catcher when I've been a middle infielder for about 10 or 15 years? So, I stuck with it. I said, if he wants me as a catcher, I'll do it. And I got to work on it. And instead of being the shortstop my senior year, I went in as the catcher again to get the reps in, get better. And I've been catching this summer. I've been catching ever since he told me that, and ever since I committed.
All right. Do you think there's any possibility that you'd switch up the position, or I mean, obviously you're focused on staying at catcher, but is there any possibility of moving to short at some point?
I'm open to it, and I'm not closing myself off to only a catcher. I know he needs catchers on the roster, so it will give me a good chance to get into the lineup at some point. But looking at the roster, he's got a senior catcher right now and a couple of upperclassmen middle infielders. So, if anything, I'm willing to move to the outfield if he needs to, just get in the games and kind of establish myself at the college level. But as of right now, primarily I'm a catcher, and that's where I'm going to be when I go into college.
So for you now, you've made All-State and everything here, going to play college baseball positions, switch like we talked about. For you, what's your legacy going to be at Bishop Brady, New Hampshire baseball?
Just working hard. I guess legacy-wise, what people are going to remember me by is my leadership. I did my best to pick the team up when, guys were struggling. I do my best to cheer them up, keep them in the game. One of the things this year that I did as a captain was I didn't just, grow baseball players. I established young men, and I really played a part in some of these kids' formation as from a teenager to a young adult. And one of the things I did this year as a captain was I didn't just develop young players, I grew young men, and I was at the center of, helping them transition from middle school to high school and to become young adults. And that, that was not just on the field, that was off the field, in the dugout, in school, in every aspect of life. And, I think that's what they'll remember me as, someone who is really focused on the whole person and not just the player. I think the only other legacy that I could have possibly left are some of my moments with Skip Foy this year. Some of the big learning moments that I've had over the years, and making sure that the team knew that Skip was the coach and we were the players. That was one of the big moments of my career.
Sometimes that can be a struggle. All right, any final thoughts, words of advice?
Apply yourself. Don't be afraid to. I had to reach out, I had to apply myself to get into college, to get to where I wanted to be. Don't be afraid to do that. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I had to ask a lot of questions going into junior and senior year about, how to play my position, college, and so much more. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to apply yourself, and don't be afraid to put your name out there.
All right. Thank you, Andy.
Of course, Drew.